Hey, everybody. Welcome to another How to Succeed podcast. This is how to succeed at recession-proofing your company culture. This is the show that helps you get to the top and stay there. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and my guest this week is a very special guest. It's my pops, Steve Montague. He's been a Sandler trainer in Kansas City for over 29 years, which means he's been through a few recessions. We're going to talk to him about that and what you can do to recession-proof your culture. The following podcast is copyrighted by Sandler Systems, Inc. and protected by U.S. copyright laws. Sandler is the worldwide leader in sales, management, and customer service training. Find more information at sandler.com. Steve, welcome to the podcast. It feels weird calling you Steve, but welcome back to the podcast. And tell us just a little bit about your experiences with recessions and why culture is such an important part of making it through these things.
You know, the biggest thing that I think about is those companies that do have a good culture of attitude, behavior, and technique, just really walking through their process and staying focused, I think is the biggest issue. Typically when things go bad and you can't predict the unpredictable. And so when I think back, there was recently, you've got 9/11. And I remember doing a class when that first plane threw into the tower. And the attitude about people and the things, you've got typically three responses. And I think of the grief process and, we can either fight, run, but there's a third one that a lot of people do, and that's freeze. And what I really noticed is those people that stay true to their values, they stay focused, they stay true to their mission of developing their processes and people, they always come out of it 10 times better than those people that wait and see what's going to happen. And I think that was probably the biggest one. And then we had 2008, then we had 9/11, 2008, and COVID. And I just have been really fortunate to surround myself with good people. And the entire Sandler network, when we were sitting in class that next day when everything shut down, we just looked around and said, we're going virtual tomorrow. We never missed a class. Too many companies didn't figure out how to really maintain their momentum, keep in contact with people, do the things that drive success.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that I heard already in there. Number one, I think, is getting support from the people around you, whether that's the Sandler network or good employees. And that good culture, when you have one, allows bad days to be a little bit lower and you to ride those high waves a little bit longer, I feel like, when you're on a roll. And I think just having somebody else to bounce ideas off of or to help keep you going. I always make the joke on our team, as long as one of us is having a good day, we can keep everybody sane, right? When you have a great team around you, somebody can talk somebody off the ledge when they're having a bad day or had a bad loss or something and keep things rolling. But I wanted to focus in on this attitude specifically around leadership in these times and the culture. What do you feel like is the ideal attitude of a leader when they're trying to make it through a tough time?
I think the biggest number one thing, are they optimistic or pessimistic? Do they have an attitude of abundance or scarcity? And the number one thing that I see in great leaders is they're figuring out how to get through, how to be able to maintain, if nothing else, those periods of time and low times, at least maintaining without losing ground is the key, and positioning yourself, because it will turn. This too shall pass. And it's just universal. So how do we keep that mindset of optimism, planning, and doing? And really, it's going to come down to creating a plan and doing the cookbook behavior that we all know. And Mike, I think one of the biggest things there is, are people getting down, or are we really helping our people grow mentally, spiritually, and body? Do we provide those things that work on mind, body, and spirit?
Well, that was going to be my next question for you. I feel like it's a tough one, but after 30 years, you can handle these tough ones. What do you feel like is the level of transparency? I think I've heard you say before, if like the family or the business really knew how close it was or how bad it was in some of these downtimes, it probably wouldn't have been great. They wouldn't have been doing their best work. But I think also if you're not transparent and you're not telling people either how bad it is and we need to seriously step things up, or we're going to have to make cutbacks and things, or how good it is, then they could be overstressing one way. How do you feel about the balance of a leader in your transparency?
Well, I believe in radical transparency. They've got to know the situation. Now, that doesn't mean that it really comes down to the leader being optimistic and his ability to lead the people through the tough times. We have tough times, we have good times, and really maintaining that behavior that leads to success in either piece. Sometimes it's just tougher, and you almost really have to use the system, I think. In the good times, just people aren't as radical, if you will, about identifying and qualifying where they spend their time. In tough times, it's even more critical to be able to use that qualification, disqualification process on both the people on the team and the clients that we're going to service. It's pretty easy to get distracted and chase the dollar versus the really good client.
Yeah, I think that takes us to the behavior section. And you mentioned doing the cookbooks, doing the behavior already. You've mentioned qualification already. The third thing that came to mind for me really was about investments in your people at this stage. If you're a leader and you're trying to recession-proof your culture, it can be really tough. You have to continue to do the right things to grow your company, and think about it as the stock market. Like if you're investing, you're buying low here, that's going to pay off when things go back up, rather than trying to pull your money out of the stock market when it's low and buy again when it goes back high. That doesn't really work very well. But do you have any tips or advice on how we continue to invest and support our people even when the resources are shrinking?
The biggest thing there, when I think about, is hiring the right people, given the tools they need to be able to succeed. So always training your people, developing the people is the number one asset you have. The people are what makes every company grow. And if I'm truly investing in the people, now's the best time to really look at who the good people are, invest in them. And if the people don't want to grow, don't change, now's the time to cut your resources and upgrade the team.
Well, that was going to be the next hard question I had for you, which is, how do you decide which things are the optional things and which ones are still required to be investments in? So I like what you said. Maybe if you were going to cut staff, you're cutting the ones that you are not performing or are not going to be a long-term part of your team. But what about those investments? I feel like sometimes people feel like marketing investments, training investments, sales investments like travel are optional, but that can really hurt you in growing your business. How do you decide which type of marketing or sales activity is something that you can cut and what you can't?
The key there, I really believe, is efficiency, and having the system to be able to determine those people that do have a high resourceful value, that are going to make the investments that you allow them to have. I can't just cut travel. I've got to be able to do the things that need to be done. I have to do and discern more effectively and qualify and disqualify where I travel, when I travel, and the outcomes that I expect because of the travel. So how do I really put that qualification, disqualification in piece? The hardest part about being a leader is, in good times, very mediocre salespeople can look good. In tough times, it really shows who's able to do the job and who's able to do the job well. And I think that's the big factor in what tough times call for. And that's really getting the people on the team that really take it seriously and do the behaviors that are required. It just takes either more of it or it takes better at it.
And I wanted to circle back to what you mentioned on the qualification piece, because I feel like maybe some leaders that aren't experienced with Sandler wouldn't know what we mean by that. And I think in bad times, there is this tendency to think that any deal is a good deal. If it adds revenue to the bottom line, then we need to take that business. But sometimes dropping a bad client can be the best thing for you to free up time and resources, or to move on to more profitable deals, especially in prospecting. But I know when times get tough, that's when people try to get in a hurry. They kind of make bad decisions. So can you clarify, especially in a recession or a downtime, what should your team be focusing on for the most profitable deals?
I think it comes down to what we do in organizational excellence, Mike. And what's the vision of the company, the mission, the values, and are they translated into key behaviors? And when I have those key behaviors, the number one thing, unbelievable, profit is not a four-letter word. And I've worked with companies where they brought us in where they were doing 70% of their business at a loss to keep the factory people working. The company ended up going out of business. They had 80% of their business tied with one account that didn't value them. And how do we create those relationships that the customer and us, we, the vendors, are on the same side of the table, looking for the outcome that's in both parties' best interests? And that really comes down to two things in the leadership in this time. Number one, that individual respect, both for the employees. To be a good leader, that respect to the individual, that value of the individual has to be translated then to the clients as well. Do they really value the clients? Do the clients value them? Really, we want to be able to have a good synergistic relationship, that we are on the same side of the table, working for an outcome that's going to be profitable for both sides. And too many times it becomes adversity in the old school of selling versus that mutual beneficial relationship that we're looking for in our methodology of consultative sales.
Now that takes us to technique, and to follow up on that, I have kind of found in recession times that there's kind of two good buckets to look for prospects and clients in. One is the clients you already have, going into a keep and expand mode of the relationships you already have, I think is kind of a good number one priority. Number two for me, and I think a lot of people struggle with this, is when you look wider, there is usually somebody having their best year ever in every recession. And so some industries may not be that way. If you were selling to hotels during the pandemic, all of them were virtually shut down. So that may not necessarily be 100% true all of the time, but generally in every kind of market, there is somebody who's seeing a better or different opportunity. Can you talk a little bit about how we actually go about attacking a down market?
You just remind me of half a dozen different things. So number one is the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Okay. And if I really think about that, do I have to expand, change, or something? One of the things that I have realized in our business anyway, I want those kind of customers that are doing business. And in every recession or downturn we've had, my best clients have been the service industry, landscaping business, HVAC, things like that, where I've had, up to 4 clients in the same industry. And now, since you bring that up, one of the guys that would have been the 4th client in HVAC during that period of time, he looked at me and he says, "So I'm going to be in the same room with 3 of my top clients in town?" I said, "Yes." And he says, "Well, how's that work?" I says, "Well, you just don't break up any specific clients you're working on. And then what it's going to be is the person that executes the plan the best." So do you have the right people to be able to learn to execute dynamic communication and true value? Or are you going to be selling on price? So do you want to raise the bar? And if I've got the entire industry raising the bar and nobody's losing money, how would that benefit you? So you brought up 2 big things there, Mike. Number one, who moved my cheese? Where's going to be the industries that are growing? I can't stop my marketing because eventually they will come back. I've got to maintain my prospecting effort with those good clients that I know will be back. Maybe I just don't call them on as frequently. So then how do I really manage the account? Account management really becomes the key. And then focused prospecting.
I love that. Although I think we did get a little bit off track because we were talking about recession-proofing your culture. And I wanted to turn the discussion internally here to your team. If you're a leader, I'm guessing you probably need to increase your one-on-ones and check-ins. You need to do some things differently. Or maybe it's just the same great stuff you do all of the time anyway, that protects your culture and good people. So I'm not sure there's a whole lot of changes here, but maybe what are some of the things you would recommend in any market to make sure you're protecting that culture here while it can be under attack too?
My head went to there where you're talking about is really wearing those 4 leadership hats. If I've got a really good culture, I've got a good onboarding process, I got good accountabilities, I'm managing that performance all the time. Now, what's going to happen is, as we talked earlier, my good people are doing the right things all the time. They're going to be consistent in their business. It's the ones that don't have the technique or think they're good enough that really they're going to have to get more coaching or be coached out. And it's going to be their choice. They're going to learn or grow, or they're going to have to go do what they aren't doing somewhere else.
I like it. All right. Any other final thoughts? Anything we missed on recession-proofing your company culture?
I think recession-proofing your company culture, those companies that are working with us in organizational excellence, the leadership, and the communication process of driving individual success with the success triangles, there is no better way to recession-proof your company than have everybody on that striving for excellence page, setting personal goals, knowing what the goals are. The goals are going to change, but life changes, everything changes. The only consistency is change. So and the big thing there, Mike, I think number one is being willing to accept the uncomfortable, really moving into the reality of accept the things I can't change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. How do I really do my cookbook behavior, control the things that I can, and bet on the outcome? A good plan will typically be well executed.
All right. Once again, we've been talking with Steve Montague, a longtime Sandler trainer from Kansas City, and also my father. So I obviously know you about as well as I do any guest I've had on the podcast in 500 shows, but I would love to hear your thoughts for the audience here. I'm interested at this point in your career after 30 years in Sandler and 50 years in sales. What's your next goal? What's your definition of success at this point?
My definition of success is really the legacy. You, your brother, and Laura, in my estimation, are all exceptional people. So the next level is, how do we help these grandkids become the same kind of successful people that you are? And I'm just looking forward to helping Rick, who's buying my franchise, and helping him realize his vision for success, which is different than mine. I got to spend a lot of time with you guys. I exposed you guys to what we teach really early. And I would love to be able to have all of the kids understand the success principles or success triangles that Sandler teaches, that individual respect and high eyesight side where they value themselves and don't let anybody get under their skin or to them, because they have such a unique respect for themselves.
And do you have a favorite quote, motto, or mantra that you try to keep in mind these days?
I go to a couple of things. One, I just told you, one of my favorite in tough times, and it can be week to week, day to day, but the serenity prayer. Just, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And everything that I see today, I just see all of it coming together. And one of the reasons that I bought into the Sandler system is the fact that there's no disconnects. Anything out there that really drives individual or corporate success, we've got such a cadre of 400 people like you and I that are all in here looking to do the best we can. If there's any idea that we are open to any idea that will change or better our performance. So the other thing I like right now is when Mattson talks about on a daily basis, what do I need to do more of? What do I need to do better? What do I need to do different? And that daily examination with confident humility is what I think takes leaders through any type of change that we could have.
I love it. Again, for more information on Sandler, you can reach out to a local Sandler trainer like Steve in Kansas City by going to sandler.com and click on find a training location, or you can find our enterprise team on the website as well. If you have multi-locations or multi-state or country organizations, check out our enterprise team. They help with that. And as always, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube. And thank you for listening. Remember, whatever you are, be a good one. The How to Succeed podcast is brought to you by Sandler, the worldwide leader in sales management and customer service training with over 200 locations. For more information, visit sandler.com.
The Sandler Summit returns in 2023. Each new event builds exponentially upon the energy and success of the prior year. The 2022 Sandler Summit event was a huge success for everyone who attended, so don't miss the next one. Buy your tickets to the Sandler Summit at sandler.com/summit.